clean the connections and see if that does anything. I doubt it will, but hey, whatever, because it's intermittent, you know. I put it up and I still couldn't take it, so I got it out again, and I went all over this carburetor and I found an adjustment. That's just the idle mixture screw, which is supposed to be on Kohler's documentation. It's up here, but I've said it's got to be somewhere, and I just finally found it. So I'll let y'all know if that fixes it. So we're running not 100%, but 98%. Let me show you. That left cylinder, I think, is a weak cylinder. I think that's why swapping coil, swapping plugs, swapping whatever, if you unhook the right one, you could really tell. If you unhook the left one, kind of tell. So it's taken a long way to get here, but I think that's the original problem, or it's part of the original problem. So my plan is rip all this stuff off, get down to where we can replace the head gaskets. I'm going to put the original carb back on. I'm going to basically level set back to 0 with a fresh head gasket, because I don't know if that carb, it was running rough, but I don't know if that was the carb or the head gasket, but I want to eliminate as many variables as possible. So I want to get the heads rebuilt, put back on original carb, and see where we're at from there. At that point, if the carb's still funky, I've got this new carb I can put on and we can tune it from that point. But I want to try to remove as many variables as possible to get this thing back and running. So for the 7th, 8th, 10th time, let me rip the covers off of all this. So we just take it and set it aside over here. There. So some of these motors have studs, some have bolts. So you can see right here, that's the head of a bolt. Now I should have looked on the, I didn't know if it was studs in the middle and bolts outside, or I don't know how the ones with studs, if it's all studs or just studs on the inside. But the good thing about having a bolt is if we take the bolt out, this head, where it's at, can move up and down, left and right, whatever. It'll be easy to get off the exhaust. If it's on studs, like the way that carburetor is, to where the stud comes out and you just have little nuts, well, you can take the nuts off, but the head has to slide out. And this one don't want to slide out because of the exhaust, but this one, if I take the bolts out, I can just straight up. Okay. Here's a push rod. And I'm going to put, this is the intake, so I'm going to put this on the, I will mark that as intake. And this will be the exhaust one. We'll go ahead, I don't know if it matters, but try to not mix stuff up. So I got number 2, this is number 2 cylinder. I and E, intake and exhaust. Now the torque pattern is 1, 2, 3, 4. So maybe we'll unloosen it in the same way. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, there we go. Let's see if we have an exhaust leak. So this was the side against the block, because the numbers go out towards the head. Compress this spring so we can pull the valve keepers off. This is always super sketchy. They'll fall out. Yeah, there's one. There's two. Now we'll just loosen this. And the spring comes off. I just push on it and the valve will come out. And it looks good. What we got here is a piece of 220 grit, and we are going to wet sand this surface. Just we want to see nice consistent finish. This is a piece of glass. It's about 1/4, 3/8 of an inch. It's thick piece of glass. It's about the thickest thing I could find. And you want to do this wet sand. I use WD-40. You might be thinking, hey, what are you doing? If you've ever watched the Pakistani mechanics work on stuff out in the middle of the street, rebuild an engine, this is how they do it, and it works. So, now, do not push, you just push. You will let the weight of the cylinder head do the work. Take a look. Okay, now we can see it's getting shiny here, but over here by the exhaust, where we were suspecting, it's still kind of dark. So once again, I am not pushing down, I am just pushing sideways and basically letting the weight of the cylinder head do the work. Yeah, I think that's as good as, I think that's plenty good. And just a quick note on surfacing this head. You don't, this is 220, that's about as fine as I would go. Because you don't want this to be mirror smooth. You don't want to like work it down like 220, 350, 500, 800, 1000, 2000, you know, whatever. There needs to be grooves and scratches in this surface, because that's part of what holds that head gasket in. If you think about it, if I squirted WD-40 on this piece of glass and pushed it between my hands, my daughter could come grab it and yank it out of my hands, just because no matter how hard I push, there's no friction. Versus this was like a plank out of a fence. I mean, there ain't no way. I mean, you'd be ripping my skin off or whatever. You got a really good grip on it, so it's the same thing. You don't want a mirror finish on this. You want it flat, but you don't want it smooth like glass, you know. So you'll see these little scratches and ridges in here. You want that because that helps grab that gasket. So I'm gonna take this over to the sink, scrub it off, and we'll be back. Yes. All right. Take a rubber hammer. There. That was, you get that click, that was the valve opening and closing, just to make sure these things are seated. They're not going to boing. So let me do the other one, and then we'll go put the head on. But before I do final cleaning, what I want to do to make it easier is to get this at top dead center, get this piston all the way out where both of these lifters are in all the way. So the other side's starting to compress. You can hear it. So that means the next time this side will be compressing, which is what we want. Now the other side has a valve open. That's why it's easy to push. And these lifters are not moving. I'm gonna get right up here, about at the top. It's good enough. The reason we want it like that is that means those lifters are as far back as possible. So when we put this all back together, it'll make putting those rocker arms a lot easier. And I'll bring this back up when that happens. It'll make more sense. But got the gasket. There we go. All right, so let me go get the torque specs, and I'll be right back. I've got to use this tiny one at its max setting for the first one. So I'm going hard enough. So this is 200 inch-pounds, or 20-something Newton meters, and that's as high as this one goes. And then the other one I've got is this big monster, and as low as it goes is 43 Newton meters, 42, which the second torque sequence is supposed to be 41, so I'm like, okay, good enough. We'll see, hopefully this doesn't feel dangerous. It's starting to feel dangerous. Man, I don't want to go. Okay, so we got a click. All right. Come on. Thank you. Jeez. There's nothing more nerve-wracking than fighting aluminum. All right, we'll just check it. Yep. 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 There we go. All right. And what's cool is this motor was built 20 years ago, back when they let you fix stuff. And so you can download the owner's manual, not the service manual, the owner's manual. And it has all this information. It has the torque specs. I mean, it tells you how to take it apart. It's just back when, you know, they let you work on stuff and they expected people to work on stuff. All right, so now the next thing to do is get the rockers installed. And that's why I was saying I wanted to have the lifters as far back as possible. Okay, so we want to get it on the lifter. We'll check the torque of that in just a second. Get the other one. So there's the lifter way back there. And you see this ball fits in this socket right here. So this lawnmower has what's called hydraulic lifters. So that means that thing back there is actually, if you think about 2 coffee cans, one of them a little bit smaller than the other one, that fit within each other, and they're filled with oil. So the oil pressure pushes them apart. You don't have to, you measure the gap right here with the feeler gauge. These you don't, you just torque this down and the hydraulic lifter takes up the slack. So it's kind of like a shock absorber. If I didn't say it, the head bolts go 200, then 370 inch-pounds. You go 1, 2, 3, 4 on the head bolts, and on these obviously it doesn't matter, just 160 inch-pounds. If you have the black ones, if these are black. Silver is I don't know, looking in the manual, I don't remember, I didn't look up silver. I just want to spin it around and watch it and make sure nothing looks awry. It means we can now put on our valve cover. All right. Now the decision is, do I mess with that other head or not? I'm taking this one apart, done what needed to be done. And my answer is no. Kohler says just do what, there's no recommendation on do one, do the other. And I just don't want to screw with it. That side runs fine. I am not an expert, so the less stuff I touch on this mower seems to be the better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting it back together. So let me do that. Y'all have seen me take it apart. I'm just going to put it back together in reverse, and then we'll come back when I've got something interesting to show you. Okay, I've got this thing put together just enough so it'll run. That's better. That is better. It's a nice solid hit. This cylinder is stronger, but this one's now working. It's not like kind of working, medium working. It's working, and oh my God, the carb is just pouring fuel out. So I'm gonna swap the carbs and open up the garage door before I choke to death, because I'm, whew. All right, I'll be back. See, so if this is sitting like this, I want more pressure. I want to bend this up, so I want to basically bend this way. So let's see if I can. You know, if this thing needs a little more pressure to seal, or if that's where my problem is at this. At this point, I'm trying anything, so. That battery died, but I've got it running smooth. There's no leaking here, so maybe it was the float. If it was leaking here, I just tightened that up. I'm calling it good. I'm gonna put it back together and see how it runs. All right, so that's pretty much all the fuel out of the car, but what we're gonna do, take it one step further, there's probably still a little bit in there. We're gonna put the choke on, if you have a choke. If you don't have a choke, well, you do. It's either separate, like this, or it's probably you've pushed this all the way forward, and we'll try to get a little bit more fuel out of it. See? What the choke does is it adds a tremendous amount of vacuum to pull any little last vapors of fuel through. We'll try it again. All right, turn the key off. Open the choke. We're done. Okay, as a final wrap up on this series, ultimately the issue with this mower was it had a bad carb and a bad head gasket. Now the carb was from sitting, and I could have cleaned it, but it was cheaper to just buy a new one. So I bought the new carb. It still ran okay, but you would take a plug wire off, take a plug wire on. It would kind of change how the motor was running, but it really just never ran smooth. And so that made me think it was ignition. So I did a long journey on chasing ignition problems, swapping coils, cleaning ground wires, taking ground wires off and on. And it would sometimes make a difference and sometimes wouldn't. Ultimately, I figured out, or I just came to the conclusion that it was a head gasket. Once I got the head gasket replaced, then everything started falling into place. Put the carb on, the new carb leaked, took it apart, changed messed with the float, got it working. The new carb has an adjustment, so I got the idle adjusted, and now that thing runs really good. Next year, I'll probably try some of those different witch's brews that you can do to try to unstick rings, because I'm thinking maybe that number 2 cylinder, the rings are stuck or kind of sticking. That's why it has lower compression or just lower performance. Maybe I'll buy a compression tester and compare them, because it's running better. It's hitting every time. It's running smooth. But you can see when I swap pulling plugs off, number 1 cylinder has more. It's contributing more than number 2. So there's still an issue there, but I think whatever the issue is compression related, and it's not the head gasket. It's not the valves. It's got to be either it's just wore out from running with a blown head gasket for so long, or the rings are maybe stuck. So that's something I'll mess with next year. But hope you enjoyed this. Hope it helped. If you got any questions, let me know. See ya.